I mean, can you believe this? Look at the angle. Look at the angle on this thing. Like this is Hollywood quality. Like, I can't even get the tripod out of the frame on this thing. Wow. I might have to start doing it up a little bit more. I might have to face this way. Worst of all, you can see more of my fat freaking face. When I enter Welcome back to Orthodox Review, the most uneducated educational program here on the internet today. I'm your host, the guy with 1.5 thumbs. New camera, new episode. Thank you, Peter B. Enough about my good fortune. Let's talk about something even better. Books. So, the Great Fast is about this close. All right, folks? So let's talk about asceticism. Let's talk about the Celtic Monk. All right, this is part of the Cistercian Studies series, published by Cistercian Publications, right? Yeah, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now, before all you hyperdocs get all butthurt about the fact that it's Cistercian Studies, you've read books in this series and you don't even know it. Sayings of the Desert Fathers, that's this publisher. Yeah, the same copy that even Jordanville sells. So anyway, we may have actually talked about a couple of these publications in the past, and in fact, it's Abba Dorotheos of Gaza, the Discourses and Sayings, published by them, that is required reading day one at the Hermitage of the Holy Cross in West Virginia. So anyway, let's get through the pertinent notes and stuff like that. Now, first and foremost, we're not really going to be going over the construction of the book because, hey, it's a paperback, it's a book. It's not like it's a prayer book that's meant to, stand the test of time or whatever. But the contents are really freaking cool. Okay, so I had picked up this Classics for Western Spirituality, Celtic Spirituality, back in the day. And this got some bangers in it. It's got a lot of really cool poems and hymns and stuff, but it's got the lives of several saints. The Voyage of Brendan is in here. And it's a book that I actually go back to every now and again, as can be evidenced by the crinkle of the spine. But when I saw this, when I was just randomly browsing, 6 months to a year ago, and picked it up, almost entirely based on who the publisher was. So I was tickled to get into it and find some really cool 99.99998% pre-schism delightful Celtic goodness. So the first half of the book are various rules from different monastic communities that either trace their lineage back to said saint or were named for said saint because of the tradition. For instance, and by the way, it's worth numbering the Psalms in the translation. When it talks about a psalm, they give you the Septuagint numbering first. So that helped immensely when I was first going through it and trying to figure out what Psalms they were talking about and realizing, wow, some serious Desert Father stuff going in, but I digress. Let's get into that a little bit. So the rule of St. Albi is the first rule that you will find in this book, and it goes in descending length, the way it was organized. Now, the rule of St. Albi, and by the way, St. Albi reposed somewhere between 529 and 534. But this particular rule, or the manuscript of this rule, dates from 750 thereabouts. So hundreds of years before the schism. So no problem there. Now, the rule of St. Albi was not only the first one in the book that was the most fleshed out, let's say, had the most detail to it, but because of that, you see just how similar the early Celtic monastic rule was to that of the Desert Fathers, say St. Macarius the Great, St. Anthony, St. Moses the Black, like the ascetic life and the Cenobitic life, with hermitages and the whole nine. So we're going to go through a few of the notes that I took on that right now, because I want to kind of get your appetite a little wet for what kind of cool stuff you can find in here. And since, again, we're coming up on the Lenten season, maybe a little help with the asceticism couldn't hurt, huh? So the basic rules of conduct are normal, that you would find in any monastery, keep your mouth shut, But what is really cool is on page 21, and yeah, I took so many notes, and I used green pen to mark, so nice. The first thing I noticed was the liturgical rules on page 21 orders prostrations with Psalm 118, Septuagint. And yes, as we all know, and at midnight, by the way. And so right away in the Eastern tradition, as most of you may know, or maybe you don't, but the midnight service is Psalm 118. So right away we're seeing that parallel with the Eastern practice. It's maybe not well known that the fathers that founded the monasteries in Ireland and Scotland, they all have a pedigree from Egypt. So nothing here should really be too surprising, although it might be a delightful little... let's see, page 22. So they use the line from Psalm 69, "O Lord, make speed to save us, O Lord, make haste to help us," at the end of every psalm when they're reading the psalm rule. There's an emphasis on keeping the canonical hours. Blessings and prayers upon entering the church are very much like the ones we have in the Eastern tradition. And then I had to put brackets around this one because it stuck out to me. Because like with any book, in addition to taking notes for an episode, I'm going to mark off what speaks to me. Just as the base is immovable by hammering on the anvil, so must you be faithful until death to the Mass, to prayer, and to fasting. Be a rock, baby. I dug that. And of course it goes on with some like guest house rules. What was interesting, there is a rule that known, which is roughly third hour, 9 a.m., should be prayed outside, out in the open, in the fields, I guess, between April 8th until October. I guess it's a seasonal thing. And you'll find that later on in some of these rules, there's an emphasis placed on praying outdoors. They were really into nature, and frankly, it could get kind of stuffy in the summer. I don't know if maybe that's it. I got nothing to say on that. So when we get into some of the other rules here, for instance, the rule of Saint Congo, who flourished between 517 and 1602, although the rule as presented is from the 18th century, possibly based on that saint's tradition. There's an emphasis on the side of the cross being made over the chest and face. So I would imagine this is more like the Anglican practice of crossing 3 times with the thumb that probably sprung from this tradition. So I don't know. There's one rule in here to pray in intervals, kind of like grazing. I thought that was kind of cool. The idea, instead of sitting there and praying for hours on end, you pray, you go do some work, you pray, you go to do it, and you're praying throughout the throughout the day. The Jesus prayer may be on your lips. Ask God for provisions for guests. Accept poverty, not accept poverty, accept poverty, which I thought was pretty cool. That we shouldn't. The monks weren't to stretch themselves. The Lord even told us, sufficient for the day is its own worries. We shouldn't, look at my clothes, the flowers of the field and the birds of the sky. They either spin or toil, and yet the Lord provides for them in due season. We, human beings, but especially the monastics that we're being written to, should do the same. And again, there's a lot of emphasis put on the Psalter in all these rules. Now here's something kind of cool, and I'm going to go to the page. So page 140. There are 3 types of martyrdom that are mentioned in the book in numerous points in different rules. But then later on in the book, you have some homilies and a few other just litanies, which are really cool. And then, of course, there's some Celtic prayers in Latin in the back. We'll get into this in a minute. But I want to read you the section on the 3 martyrdoms because they might sound a little familiar. And this was from a rule from roughly the 9th century. A person undergoes white martyrdom when he leaves all for the sake of Christ, even though this means fasting, hunger, and hard work. Green martyrdom is attributed to someone who through them, that is, fasting and work, is freed of his desires or undergoes travail in sorrow and penance. Red martyrdom is to be found in the sufferings of a cross of death for Christ's sake, as was the way with the apostles, because of the persecution of the wicked and while preaching the truths of God. So, in the Celtic tradition, 3 martyrdoms. Now, the 2 martyrdoms we think of today are the red martyrdom, dying for Christ's sake, and white martyrdom, which is like persecution. But yeah, even the Celtic monks of old understood martyrdom. Now, in the back, like I said, there's some litanies. There's one section here called the Alphabet of Devotion, which I thought was pretty cool, and reads, again, a lot like a rule. What do you want, Spooks? I'm sorry, is that on your spot? There you go. Those who wish to encourage the fear and love of God within themselves are to call upon and beseech the Lord of heaven and earth, since a person normally remains in the state of mental laziness until the fear of God takes hold of his heart. And of course, acedia was the word originally used, so translated over from the Greek into the Latin and Gaelic or whatever else they had. Hi, honey. You're totally in frame right now. They can probably see you. That's cool. The litanies are neat, just because if you have any experience with litanies in general, but especially Irish litanies, they're very nature-centric. The Irish Christians, the Celtic monks, were very into the creation, God's bounty. Hi, Spooky. And then she fell. No bad theology to be found in here, by the way. I was tickled by that because, especially coming up on the 9th century, you start to see a little weirdness. But anyway, so the Celtic Monk, get it on Amazon or wherever you prefer to buy your books. They'll get it for you. What was the cover price on this? Price has gone up over the years. It's $29.95 now. But for $30, you're getting a really good book. Yeah, prizes are going in the mail this week. Didn't have any money for mailing things, which kind of sucks. People send me money, but then I wind up having to spend it on things that are not the show, and that kind of bums me out. But anyway, I don't know. Go buy a book. Good spiritual reading for Lent, if I do say so myself. I mean, especially if you've already been through the ladder of divine ascent and the alphabetical sayings of the Desert Fathers, and whatever else your hyperdox friends over on the J. Dyer Discord tell you to read. Instead, how about reading something a little lighter, a little simpler, maybe a little more practical? The Celtic Monk, Rules and Writings of Early Irish Monks, translated and annotated by, man, I can't pronounce this name. Anyway, it's number 162 in the Cistercian Studies thing. Anyway, oh, by the way, a lot of talk about eating watercress in here, so in case you were wondering, it's like Irish water cabbage. Anyway, all right, we're done. Listen, thanks again. On behalf of Spooky Cat and myself, thank you so much for everything. I'm overwhelmed and completely unworthy of the blessings God has afforded me through you. But man, do I love making these videos. And man, do I hope this one turns out well. We'll see you on the other side of the screen. Continue to pray for me, please. I'm praying for you. Don't forget to go to church, say your prayers, and remember God. God bless.